Hello, everyone, and welcome to our 54th episode of In the Trenches, Kroll's weekly cyber threat intelligence briefing. My name is George Glass, and I'm an Associate Managing Director in the Cyber Threat Intelligence team. This week, we are joined by Ellie Tigson, Elaine here, and Sarah Becker, who are all from our Cyber Threat Intelligence team. As always, we'll be covering the most recent trends that our threat intelligence team is witnessing in the trenches. So let's talk news you can use. First up, AI platform Hugging Face has disclosed a Spaces secret leak. The platform disclosed this in a blog post that an unattributed threat actor gained access to the Spaces platform that allows users to deploy and share AI applications. Users of the Spaces platform are advised to enable fine-grained access tokens, which Hugging Face has now set to be the default option. Next up, some more news on the ongoing Snowflake breaches. Threat actors have stolen 3 terabytes of data from Advanced Auto Parts Snowflake account. The actors allege that they have taken 380 million customer profiles, among other sensitive information. The data is being sold for $1.5 million on underground forums, which is obviously part of a larger series of attacks on Snowflake customers since at least mid-April 2024. It's very important to ensure that MFA is enabled on Snowflake instances, as it is believed that the compromises are stemming from credentials purchased from InfoStealer infections, and some of those infections we believe go back all the way until October of last year. Finally, CISA have released 4 new industrial control system related advisories on the 6th of June. These advisories provide timely information on the current security issues, vulnerabilities, and exploits surrounding ICS systems created by Johnson Controls, Mitsubishi Electric, and Emerson. So they're very much worth a study if these are systems that your organization uses. Remember, if you have any questions or comments, please get in touch with us using cti@kroll.com. That's cti@kroll.com. So let's get on with the rest of the day's briefing. Today, we're going to cover the following trends our team is concentrating on. I'll be covering 2 vulnerabilities. First up, something that we covered in an out-of-band bulletin last week regarding a critical PHP remote code execution vulnerability. And secondly, a remote code execution vulnerability in Confluence data center. Elaine is going to be covering MINESWEEPER in this week's Malware Spotlight, and a first for our weekly bulletin here. Ellie is going to cover a threat actor spotlight on Moonstone SLEET. Finally, it'll be over to our ransomware expert, Sarah Becker, to cover some news of the most recent attacks affecting the NHS and a new threat group. So let's get to these vulnerabilities. First up is the PHP vulnerability, which we released an out-of-band for on Friday. This vulnerability is tracked as CVE 2024-4577. It has a CVSS score of 9.8, making it severity critical, and there is a POC exploit available. All versions of PHP installed on Windows operating systems appear to be vulnerable, and the mitigation for this is to upgrade your PHP installations ASAP. So the background on this is a DevCore researcher, Orange Sai, has released details of the vulnerability. So far, they have done a number of tests on certain locales that this particular vulnerability affects, and those locales that they've tested on are the Chinese localization and Japanese localization of PHP, although others could be affected. The vulnerability stems from a mishandling of Unicode characters and the application of the best fit feature, which is notably very similar to CVE 2012-1823. Essentially, the vulnerability allows for a TAC character or a dash character to be appended to commands and executed by PHP. And the misinterpretation there is the use of various Unicode characters that appear to be a normal TAC or dash as you'd have on your keyboard, but are in fact different and that they're used for other localizations. The proof of concept has been released by Watchtower, and there are many appearing on GitHub. And as you can see from the slide here, prepending a TACD, allow URL include, and a prepend file there to the request allows the threat actor to execute PHP code. In this example, which is provided by Watchtower, it renders the PHP info pane, essentially proving that PHP is executing commands on the back end. Typically, this would not be allowed because the TAC or the dash would be sanitized and checked to make sure that there's no command injection occurring. In this particular case, you can see I've highlighted those in red there. Those Unicode characters are essentially getting the best fit feature applied to them, whereby a person may apply a TAC to the request, and the best fit feature is essentially interpreting that and going, oh, that must mean the actual TAC or dash. This allows it to bypass the sanitization, and then will lead to remote code execution. So a very easy to exploit vulnerability affecting a lot of systems here. There's a lot of mitigation guidance provided in the report. So we suggest that you certainly read that. And I think this vulnerability is going to have a fairly long tail as well, as so many systems use PHP of various different flavors and versions, and everyone is likely going to have to upgrade to the fixed version. Next up, let's cover a remote code execution vulnerability in Confluence. This vulnerability is tracked as CVE 2024-21683 with a CVSS score of 8.3. Again, with this one, a POC is available, and it affects the Confluence data center and server of the versions you can see there, but it's essentially all of them. And the remote code execution was discovered by a Sonic Wall. And again, it's another input validation issue here, whereby an attacker could add a new macro language to the system, which could contain malicious code and get remote code execution. One of the biggest mitigating factors here is that the user must be authenticated and have the capability and the privilege to add a new macro code language. That would be a non-default. So there's some mitigation there. But as I mentioned, proof of concept has been uploaded to GitHub. That there are some others appearing as of today. And obviously updates have been released and should be applied as soon as possible. Right, next up, I will hand over to Elaine to talk about MINESWEEPER in this week's Malware Spotlight. Over to you.
Thank you, George. Good day, everyone. For this week, we'll talk about the Trojanized MINESWEEPER, and let's explore its details. So, malware specifically targeted Ukraine organizations and others in Europe and in the USA, starting around February to March this year. So they initiated this attack through phishing emails sent from an email address support at patient-docs-mail.com, pretended to be from a medical center. So for the initial access, attack begins with a phishing email, seemingly harmless 33 megabyte screensaver file or .sar file, which actually hides the malicious content. During the execution, the SCR file created with PyInstaller that includes a legitimate MINESWEEPER game code and a large encoded string. It also downloads the an additional the website that can be used to take notes and share notes online. For its persistence, this malicious code decodes a zip archive which installs the SuperOps remote management and monitoring tool. By this, it gives an attackers remote control over their victims' devices. For its defense evasion, using the MINESWEEPER game code, It made the file appear benign, while the actual malicious in an encoded string, which helps on evading the detection. That's pretty. That's all from me, George. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for that. Ellie, please let us know what you've been researching about KTA 334 or Moonstone SLEET.
Thanks, George. So, in a recent publication, Microsoft has identified a new threat actor they're tracking as Moonstone SLEET, a group targeting organizations for financial and cyber espionage. The group initially appeared to share techniques with Diamond SLEET, another threat actor that was observed to have distributed Trojanized versions of legitimate software in a widespread supply chain attack in November 2023. However, Moonstone SLEET quickly developed its own infrastructure and attack methods. Microsoft has also observed concurrent operations between Moonstone SLEET and Diamond SLEET. Moonstone SLEET's activities include deploying custom ransomware, creating malicious games, establishing fake companies, and employing IT workers to support its financial and cyber espionage objectives. Since its initial observation, the group has targeted the software and information technology, education, and defense industrial based sectors. The group has also targeted individuals and organizations within these sectors. Moonstone Steed's primary motive appears to be financial gain, and the group's previous engagements in cyber espionage also indicate a focus on revenue generation and intelligence collection. The threat actors were first observed deploying a new custom fake penny ransomware, new variant in April, following a 2-month network breach. Moonstone Sleet's ransom demand was reported to amount to around $6.6 million in Bitcoin. The threat actor has been observed employing key tactics, techniques, and procedures across different campaigns, which includes Trojanized Putty, through LinkedIn and Telegram using zip archives, spreading malicious NPM packages distributed via freelancing websites, fake penny ransomware deployment, and lastly, fake companies impersonating software development and IT service. Back to you, George.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And finally, let's go over to Sarah Becker for this week's Ransomware Roundup. Over to you.
Thanks, George. So our first story we have for the Ransomware Roundup is a new group called Sensei Q. They surfaced around this month, more towards the beginning, obviously, with the creation of their data leak site. So at the time of writing and doing the research for this, they have 2 victims currently claimed on their site. Sometimes with these ransomware groups with their data leak sites, we've reported before that they'll either have a lot of information or little information. So with this group, they do have an about section and a roles section that gives us just a little bit more of a glimpse into how this group operates. Their about section has different types of rolling and state that their purpose, while also declaring that they prioritize common sense and claim many executives turn a blind eye, and that's why they end up on the data leak site. The rules section for the site kind of just highlights certain areas of conduct, such as payments, and they kind of highlight also the participation of third parties and post-transaction guarantees. So in that rules section, Sensei Q emphasizes that the participation of police departments or any other law enforcement, as well as third-party negotiators, which some companies may use, is absolutely prohibited, and it violates one of the clauses in their terms of service, which doing so will lead to termination of negotiations and all agreements that were previously reached. It should also be noted that it is rumored that the group is using the Lockbit 3.0 builder, and that builder has been commonly used because it was leaked back in 2022 and again has been widely used with other groups. Next slide, please. And another big healthcare attack that has recently happened is the Synovus attack. It impacted numerous hospitals in the London area and disrupted healthcare services. the CEO of the UK's National Cybersecurity Centre, Ciaran Martin, stated that the ransomware group Killian is likely responsible for this attack. Impact from the attack resulted in Synovus being locked out of their systems and interfering with services at hospitals such as St. Thomas NHS Foundation Trust, King's College Hospital NHS Foundation Trust, and other primary care providers in the Southeast London area. Even with their customer service portal, they were receiving warnings and memos sent by officials to reveal that many of the hospitals were affected by this attack and that it's still an ongoing issue that had major impact on operation and procedures. So much so that some services such as blood transfusions, non-emergency surgeries, and pathology appointments, they have either been adjusted or canceled due to the impact. So anything that was non-emergency just kind of had to get rescheduled. So according to the NHS spokesperson, all urgent and emergency services remain open as usual, and the majority of outpatient services continue to operate as normal. So we are staying updated just to see anything else coming from this story. That is all for me, George.
Thank you so much, Sarah, and thank you to Ellie and Elaine for presenting today as well. That's all we have time for this week. If you have any questions or comments, please do reach out to us using cti@kroll.com. That's cti@kroll.com. Have a great day and thank you.